You're watching Every Day's a Saturday, USCC veteran. Let's go, baby. And here's your host, Bryan. What's going on, friends and family? Thank you guys so much for joining us on another great coffee talk with Bryan and Marie. What's going on, Marie? How are we doing today?
I am exhausted, but feeling really good. It's been a really good weekend.
We love that. We love that it's been a good weekend. We need those. We need
Yeah.
more of those, right?
How are you doing?
Hey, can't complain. Well, it looks like we're going to be moving here again soon. So a little bit faster than I wanted to, but I really am excited because I do want to live in San Diego, and I've been wanting to live in San Diego for a long time. So looks like we're going to end up there a little bit sooner. Like I think we thought about more like 3 years from now, but due to circumstances, we have to make it a little bit sooner. Which so it's not
Well, that's gonna
necessarily a
that's gonna be fun because our guest that we have in a few minutes, he's actually in San Diego, so that's kind of fun.
well, lucky him. Yeah, he's in
Yeah.
a great place. Yeah, San Diego's just beautiful. And yeah, I'm excited for our next guest. I mean, we've been definitely working through some guests and we got it we're booked out all the way till January timeframe. And so anybody else, if you want to join us and come on in, send us an email. Every day is a Saturday 365 at yahoo.com, and we'll get you guys on the schedule. And yeah, so let's go ahead and kick it off how we usually do. Brew up some coffee, and then we'll let Marie kick it off with one of her great poems and then introduce our next guest. All right, so
Awesome.
let's go ahead and brew up some coffee from Cash Coffee. All right, and don't forget, we will be having Jamie from Cash Coffee on the show here soon, and he'll be telling us all about the great things that Cash Coffee got to offer. And Marie will be there in person, so she'll be able to kind of do a little bit of a show and tell.
And
And
I had the idea, this is just a random idea because I was talking to another local veteran nonprofit. I had the idea if you are a local veteran or you are part of a local veteran nonprofit and would like to come get an in person shout out, show up at Cash Coffee on October 21st at 10 a.m. It's in Logan, Utah. Cash Coffee, CACHE, Cash Coffee in Logan, Utah. So if you are a local veteran and want to come say hi, I will be there in person. It's going to be wonderful. Please show up. It will be great.
I love that. I love that. I love the addition. It's
Yeah,
now it's going into something. So that would be cool if you if someone was actually listening to this and showed up.
that would be awesome. Again, 21st of October, 10 a.m., Logan, Utah, Cash Coffee.
All right. Well, Marie, let's go ahead and get this show on the road and kick it off with another amazing poem by you, the great
Okay.
Marie Slider
Thank you.
Hendrickson. All right, I'm
Okay.
going to
So
give you the floor.
Okay. So this poem is actually kind of special because our guest is the teacher to a class that I'm taking for the spoken word through the Armed Services Art Partnership. And I think it was this Sunday. It might have been last Sunday. I think it was this Sunday. He had us listening to some music, and in listening to the music, he gave us a little prompt afterwards to write a poem. And so I started this poem, and last night I was up until like 2 a.m. finishing the poem because it just, it sparked my curiosity of where I would go with this poem. So, without further ado, I'm going to read this one, and it's called Mexican Memories. And the song was some sort of Spanish song that I couldn't understand the lyrics, but it brought back a lot of memories for me from growing up in Arizona. And so, Mexican memories. Once upon a time in Mesa, Arizona, I was a child watching some Mexicans drink Corona. Others I saw in yards working harder than most. In the Arizona heat, the sun made their skin toast. Many would sell food on the street: corn, wheat wheels, chilies, and sometimes meat. Others at the store waiting for work, they were always willing to put hands in the dirt. Some even taught me how to speak. Spanish is harder than you think. I always loved hearing mariachis play, and eating Mexican food made a wonderful day. The Mexican families were often full. Eating at their table was never dull. I loved hitting piñatas. Everything would fly. The stores had plenty spicy candies to buy. I was always accepted in the homes of my friends. Mexican families I knew, their kindness never ends. Sometimes I get lost in the pain of my past. I try to remember my experiences were vast. Mexican culture played a big part in my childhood and remains in my heart. Their traditions really helped me to grow. I built foundations from the things they showed. I learned about sacrifice, community, love, and keeping faith in God above. These memories bring a smile to my face. It reminds me my childhood was a vibrant place. I love to go visit. Every time that I do, I feel the strength of the culture as I pass through. I'm grateful I grew up in a community like this. It gives me some good things I can reminisce.
Outstanding. Another great one. Thank you so much for that. And
Thank you.
so kinda give us a little bit of the inspiration, behind that.
Yeah, so in this class as well, a few weeks ago, so Mike is really good at pulling into the emotions, right? A few weeks ago, Mike had us draw a picture of our childhood rooms, and I drew 2 versions of my childhood rooms, and it brought up so much pain from I had a lot of good moments in my childhood. I had loving parents and I had good memories, but the rooms triggered some of the more negative memories. And one of the things is as I have been processing through so much, my childhood has just looked very bleak in many different ways, as I'm processing through things. Now I'm starting to see the good things, but the poem that I wrote was a very sad poem. And so then when I heard this music, it just and I'm going to cry, it just triggered these memories of being at peace and being happy and being jovial. And it just was a very good, amazing part of my childhood was being surrounded by the Mexican culture because they were so warm and so welcoming and so happy. And so as I was writing this poem, I just felt joyful and giddy, and I felt like the happy, bubbly little kid that I know that's inside of me. And so it's just a really awesome, awesome experience, and it just is a good reminder of how powerful music and art is to me, and it's amazing because this is one of the reasons why I write my poetry, is because poetry and music and art, it just invokes such a warm healing, it stuff inside of me, you know what I mean? And I want to be able to share that with others. And so I'm so grateful, that there are people like Mike here who are passing on the torch, because Mike's been doing this kind of stuff for years and years and years, and he's passing on the torch to the next generation. And he's doing it with civilians, and he's also doing it with military, and it's just really wonderful, because it's people like him that inspires me to do what I'm doing to hopefully help the next generation. And so I'm just so honored to have Mike here. And let me go ahead and read his bio and
Real quick before you
on
read that,
go ahead.
it's crazy when you were talking about, him making you draw the your childhood room, I imagined mine and I got a pit in my stomach right away. It's kinda weird.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I just imagined my room when you were saying that as a kid, and it put a pit right in my room. I mean, right in my belly. Kinda weird.
Yeah.
I don't know if they just touched something or hit something on me, but, you know,
Well, art is such a huge thing, art and visualization is such a huge thing because it can bring up so much pain, but it can also bring up so much joy, you know?
I've had another art instructor on, so this is I'm excited because I am starting to see a lot more people using this method and, how much it's helping others as well, so I'm
Well,
excited to have him on.
Yeah, and I'm hoping now that, Mike's not on here yet, but he's listening to everything. But I'm hoping at some point we can collaborate because my ultimate goal, and I'm working on it with my business partner. My ultimate goal is to create a community, and it's called the Slider Babe community. So Slider Babe, creatively healing out loud through community. And so my idea is to build up this community for other people to share how they are healing out loud with creative means. For me, I do art, I do poetry, I do music, I do podcasting, and I want other people to have a safe place to be able to share how they're healing out loud. And then other people can come on and say, "Hey, this is how I'm doing it. Let me encourage you and help you." So maybe Mike and I can collaborate and he can kind of help me out to encourage other people with that. And so I'm really glad, to have this opportunity to have him on.
Alright, well, let's introduce him and bring him on.
Okay. So Mike Sears, he is a professional actor and writer with over 30 years of experience. He is a member of Actors Equity Union and a pending member of the Screen Actors Guild. Mike's work has been developed by the Old Globe Signet Theater La Jolla. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
La
L
Jolla,
A
La Jolla.
Jolla, La
It's
Jolla.
La Jolla, yeah.
Okay. La Jolla Playhouse and Muscle and Bone Theater Company, among others. His play How High the Moon was produced by La Jolla Playhouse for their 2019 WOW Festival and will receive a professional workshop production in New York City in the spring of 2026. Good job.
Wow, outstanding.
Awards include a San Diego Creative Catalyst Grant, the Signet Theater Finishing Line Commission, the Old Globe Playwrights Commission, outstanding production from the San Diego Actors Alliance, as well as being a two-time winner of the Craig Noel Acting Award. Mike is a member of the Playwrights Center and the Dramatists Guild. He earned a BFA in acting from the University of Montana and continued his training at the Maggie Flanagan Acting Studio in New York City. He grew up in Rapid City, South Dakota, and currently lives in San Diego, California, with his two dogs, Archie and Lou, and his wife of 25 years, Lisa. And he is also a partner with the Armed Services Art Partnership and teaches classes. And also, he works with a lot of veterans in his theater teaching. So,
Man, Mike just wow.
yes.
I'm excited to have Mike on. Alright, let's bring him on. Mike, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Hey,
Hey,
can't
Mike.
complain.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. So happy to have you on, man, and, hear all of the great things that you're doing, and, lucky you, you live down there in good old San Diego. My
Yeah.
daughter, she goes to UC San Diego,
Oh
and,
yeah.
so she's right there and just moved in with a Marine, go figure. Uh, and, we're trying to get our way down there as well, so we should be hopefully making our way down there, but San Diego's so beautiful, man.
You said you're moving. You're relocating or being stationed here.
No, just, it's yeah, I'm not being stationed, it's just time for us to move. I've been living here in the Antelope Valley for a while. Uh, we've been wanting to leave, now it's just a little bit due to circumstances, it's a little bit earlier than when we wanted to, so, but I'm excited because it's, San Diego is beautiful, great place, and, the weather's always great.
Yeah, it is a great city for sure. Well, that's good. We'll have to hang out when you get here.
Absolutely. I would love to.
So it's so good to have you here, Mike. I'm sitting here like crying like a baby, because, you're your class has brought out a lot of different layers in me, and I love what you're doing. So kind of tell us a little
Usually
bit
takes
about
about
yourself.
30 minutes before she starts to cry. So we were first 5 minutes into it. So
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
uh-oh, we're in for a ride today.
That's all
Yeah.
right.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into the acting, how you got into writing, and kind of, just kind of go through and up until where you're at today. And we'll interrupt you a crap ton. That's just kind of what we do. And just kind of guide the conversation.
Sure. Yeah.
Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so as Marie said, she and I came together through a class I'm currently teaching with the Armed Services Arts Partnership. And so I've been a teacher off and on for a long time, teaching anywhere from kindergarten up through grade school, some junior high, and then a lot of work with adults, as Marie said. So, and teaching specifically writing and acting in all of those. In all of those areas, but
Can you
um,
say what art is for the listeners who may not be, because a lot of people, when you say art, they might be thinking painting and things of that nature, but
yeah,
I
yeah.
know
And
art
also
stands for something else.
and also can you explain just a little bit about the Armed Services Art Partnership?
Yeah. So I teach specifically writing and acting. So for me, that's when I refer to art. I guess that's what I would
Okay.
mean. I think for the sake of our conversation, really, mostly performing arts. I think is so the Armed Services Arts Partnership is an organization that's available to military that are transitioning out of active duty, as well as family members who are connected to them. And it's all free programming, and it's an amazing
Did you
opportunity.
say it's open to the families too?
Yeah,
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
it's open to the families as well, and it's asap.com. I think I was just looking up Armed Services Arts Partnership. Oh, and it's tricky. The website is actually asap.org. So it's asap.org. And they have programming that's available all around the country, both in person and online. So it's a great tool for your listeners to check out. And they are providing mostly performing arts classes, but anything from improvisation to long form storytelling, to poetry, to spoken word. There are acting classes. My wife actually teaches for them as well, and is teaching in person acting classes. So they have a whole list of their programming on their website, but it's all of the programming is free, and as I said, available to military members and their family. And the purpose of the programming is not so much addressing military life and how that transitions into arts expression. It's really coming to art on its own. It's coming to these different pieces on its own. So it's a service that's provided for this community, but the content of the course is more open. So, for example, in our class, we're not talking every week about what it was to serve or to be active, or what it is to be a spouse or a family member, and how that.
Yeah, we haven't talked anything about our military at all. It is
Yeah.
strictly about the beauty of art in itself.
And so in that instance, what a person's background is, what their family situation is, or work situation, whatever is happening immediately in their external life is available to come into the work that we do, but the work itself is not immediately uh, focused on the military experience, if that makes sense. Yeah, and so for me, yeah, so I grew up in South Dakota. I was one of 5 kids. A small town. I'm 57, so I grew up in the 70s and early 80s, in a different time. No internet, no cell phones. We had music videos. That was like fucking woo. That was our big thing.
We
Right.
can't keep up with the technology advance now, man. Sheesh.
So so that's where I grew up. But we were big. We spent a lot of time outdoors. I grew up in the western part
Wait,
of South Dakota.
so you were part of the generation that actually touched grass?
We did, yeah, and a lot. So it's you think of South Dakota as primarily farming and ranching, which the majority of it is. I grew up in western South Dakota, which is where Mount Rushmore is. So there's a pocket. It's the Black Hills National Forest. So where I grew up was actually very wooded. A lot of pine and birch and aspen. A lot of water, very green. So my experience growing up was much more woods and water. And my folks had a cabin about 40 minutes out of town, and we spent the majority of our time as a family there. Not the majority, but a lot of our time as a family there. And so I was one of 5 kids. I'm the middle. I was boy, girl, boy, girl, boy. I have 2 older siblings, an older brother and sister, and a younger sister and brother. And and I grew up in the one town. And my growing up really was most colored by my dad's struggle. So my dad was a very unique person. My dad had his doctorate degree in special education. He in our town, he was the director of the gifted and special education services for the public school system. So he was a high-level administrator and teacher in our town. Had his doctorate degree. Very successful. He was an avid reader, voracious reader. Always had a stack of books by his bed. And then he was also kind of like a Renaissance guy because he was a hunter, deer hunter, turkey hunter. He was a fisherman. So he grew up in kind of a more of a time where what would you say, like hunting and literature were not opposites, right? Where men were maybe those things were, he was in the high school play, played basketball, deer hunting, so like it was a time, a world where things were not quite so separated. So he was a very interesting guy. My dad was.
They didn't see it as manly or something, in that because that world is more of like shooting, hunting, where they see you're getting more in with your tune with your feelings, and that back then was not something that we really like to dip into, especially in the man world, right? I mean,
Right.
Definitely, if you get in touch with your feelings, man, it's like, oh,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, for sure, Brian. Yeah. So my dad was a drinker, and my grandfather was what would you say, like a very a very active alcoholic. My grandfather was, and kind of to the point that my grandma was holding the family together, and my grandfather was really not capable of doing much. I never knew him. My grandfather died. Actually, he died on an operating table. He had a back alley operation. They didn't have insurance. I think he had a burst appendix, and so he bled out on a table in a back alley operation in Deadwood, South Dakota. And so I never knew him. So that's where my father came from. My grandfather was physically and verbally abusive. I know a bit from my dad. My dad never really talked much about it, but my dad did. I did say to a certain extent that his intention as a father was to not be what his dad was. So my father then became and was, I think, drawn to it. Highly educated, informed, uh, and like I said, a big reader. But his parenting was very quiet. So I think because he came from such volatility,
He went opposite.
yeah. So then what happened is that my father didn't really talk much. There wasn't a lot of talking. So I grew up in a family where, nobody really talked. It's interesting when I think about my family. You know, I knew that we loved each other. I knew that there was,
Expressing your feelings and stuff wasn't really a thing, right?
oh
Yeah.
yeah, it just didn't happen.
I'm probably jumping ahead because you're probably building into this, but I'm going to ask this question anyway. Did your father not talking and having that kind of subdued childhood, did that affect your fight to find your voice in your
Sure.
writing? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because you know, coming from a home where there was no voice, and then as I grew into a man trying to find a voice, it was a very like literal, conscious activity. You know, I came to understand I didn't have a voice, and so my father was a drinker all of his life, and an alcoholic, and of course, you know, alcoholism is chronic and it gets worse and worse. And so we also grew up in a home with an active alcoholic, and you know my mom knew that. We all knew it, but you don't speak to it, so it just happens. So then you grow up in a world where there's a huge elephant in the room, and you just nobody speaks to it, right? And you just live your life around it, and you're taught to you are taught that what you see as truth happening in front of you is actually not happening, right? So you're taught to you go, oh wait, you know, you say, oh wait, there's this, you know, there's a tiger in the living room, and the parents say, no, there's not. That's not true.
Even if you're bleeding, just cover it up. It doesn't matter that there's a tiger in there. Like it's not there. This is all in your head.
Yeah,
But I'm bleeding. I've got scars. Like I'm literally hurt. Nope, it doesn't matter.
I'm gonna tell you a story about my mom, and I don't know, it's a funny story, but it also kind of speaks to the dynamic of the family. So there were 5 kids, right, and active neighborhood with a lot of kids coming in and out, and it was springtime, and we had a front door, and the front door, I guess they still had a storm. It's a storm door, right? So that you have the main door, and then you have whatever the screen door, or the metal door. So in the winter, there's a glass piece in it, and then in the summer you take it out and you put a screen in, right? So it was March, so the glass was still in. It hadn't come out yet to put in the spring. And so I was watching TV, and my mom said, okay, it's time for dinner. You know, can you go call your brothers and sisters or whoever and tell them to come inside? So our house was such, you know, people always coming in and out that door never latched. It never really like closed because it was always getting open and closed, open and closed. So I get up and I go to open the door, and unbeknownst to me, the door had latched shut. So I go press on the glass to open it as I would, knowing that the door's not latched, and it was latched. And so I press on it, and my arm goes right through the glass door and
Oh,
slices up my arm, right? Big gash on my arm. I'm fucking bleeding, right? And everything. And so then I go to my mom, right? And I like show it to her. So she looks at it, right? Whatever. So she gets like a dish towel and she wraps it up. And then essentially she says, okay, come on, everyone, come eat. So everyone came in and sat down. She said, hold it above your head. And then she said, we'll eat dinner and then we'll go up to the emergency room. So we sat down. We all ate our dinner. We go to the emergency room.
man.
I had
Were
17.
you gushing at this point? I mean, is
No,
it bad or is it not too
no,
bad?
it wasn't. I did get 17 stitches, so it was a fucking cut.
Oh, so that's a good,
Right?
that's a good amount.
The point of my story is that my mom there was 5 kids. Dinner was hot. They needed to get fed. Uh, she understood from the injury that I wasn't going to die, and so she needed to get the kids fed. You know, they're not going to throw the dinner out and come back. So it was very pragmatic and very not a lot of drama, not a lot of hysteria. Yes, you got your arm cut. Yes, you're going to need 17 stitches, but you're not going to die. Hold it above your head, and we'll all finish dinner. Then we'll get in the car, and then we'll go to the hospital.
Eat with your left hand, you know?
Yeah.
Yes,
In the military, we call that drink water, drive on. Rub
yes,
some dirt in it and keep
yes, yeah.
going.
So, you know, I'm not military. I didn't grow up in that world, but in some ways the stories are similar. You know, so
Yep.
many of us grow up in you know, war zones of some sort. You know, in these battlegrounds. You know, that are more often than just, literal, literal, literal wars. So,
Mike,
Yeah, I
Mike,
don't
as
think. I mean,
as
a lot of people don't understand. I mean, because they grew up in a different era, but you know, back in those days, there wasn't child services, and there wasn't really all those child protective services and stuff. Like people got they got their ass whooped with like branches, and leather belts and
oh, yes.
sometimes the other side of the belt. You know what I mean? Like growing up, you know the earlier days, it was the different times. Even I was an 80s baby and I got the belt, you know what I mean? I got a nice leather belt,
Yeah,
I
you
got a
know.
brush.
we had,
So I mean, we got
yeah,
our asses a little handed to us back in the day.
my dad, when we were going on some trip or something, and it was myself and my younger sister and brother and my parents, and the three of us were in the car, and we were probably like 12, 10, and 8, I don't know. And so we were fighting in the car, and my dad, shut up, saw whatever. We were fighting, fighting. We wouldn't stop. So we were on the road. He pulled over on the side of the road, got all three of us out, stood on the side of the road, took off his belt.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got back in the car. He put on his belt, and
Silence.
we drove on our way.
Little
I'm not advocating for that one way or the other. I don't, but that's what I came from.
we learned
So
our lessons a little bit faster, I felt like back in the day, right? Like
Yeah,
you kind of like after that, I imagine there was no more fighting for a little bit there.
it's interesting. I wonder, how it is. My relationship with my dad, was complicated, and I don't know if that kind of behavior made it worse or if it would have, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. My wife and I don't have children. That's not something that happened for us, and so I haven't had the experience of parenting. So I haven't been confronted with what that is, and what it is to have your child be afraid of you in that way. And is that a bad thing or is it not? I don't know. That's a bigger conversation that I don't have. But I wonder about that. But I know. So just for the sake of time, I'll just jump and tell you that my dad eventually went to therapy or to recovery. We did have an intervention at some point. My mom finally uh, got to a point where it was intolerable, and so I was grown by then. I was 21 or 22. I was off of college, and so I had come home for the summer, and she said, "We need to do something because I can't live with him anymore and do this." And so we did have an intervention as a family, and he did agree to go to treatment. And so when he came out, he stopped drinking and he was sober for the last 7 years of his life. And but he was, my dad was highly intelligent, and sometimes I think it's harder for people who are intelligent that also struggle with addiction because I think they might think that they're smarter than the addiction, and that they can, and that a person
So
could.
validates it.
Yeah, or a person could think themselves out of it, or that they will know a way to take care of themselves that is better than community or 12-step or something. So
I'm I was just gonna say, I'm in recovery myself. I've got 8 years.
mm,
And there is a lady I met recently who, she had been in the rooms for a while and nobody had explained to her what alcoholism was. It was just kind of one of those perfect storms, that this specific question hadn't been answered for her. And we were talking and she's like, "Yeah, I've been taking IQ tests, because I know that I'm intelligent, but I don't understand why I can't stop drinking." And she's like, "I know that I'm intelligent. So what is going on here?" And we had that discussion and I was like, "It's not a matter of intelligence. It's not a matter of willpower. It is a matter of powerlessness. Like this is something that chemically changes you. This is something that it's a spiritual, mental, physical. There are so many levels to it. It's not just I am intelligent and I can get out of it. Like there are so many levels to it. And so if you I know we talk a lot to the audience, right? If you are struggling with addiction and you're thinking that, hey, I'm smarter than this, realize that it's not a matter of that. And there are resources out there. And as always, I am a recovery advocate. So if you need someone to talk to, and somebody that can help walk you through like some of the resources that are available, go to sliderbabe.com or email me at marie@sliderbabe.com, and I will help you find the resources that are available. And as always, if you are in crisis or if you're struggling with addiction and you can't get out of it and you need someone to talk to right away, Bryan put down at the bottom, call the 988 hotline. And if you're a veteran, press option 1. They will help you find resources as well. So you've got me as an advocate, you've got Bryan here is always welcome, always open to conversation. Please email us and we will get you the resources available and kind of talk to you more about recovery, because you are not alone in this.
My dad, he again, we were in a small town, and my dad was in a highly visible work situation. Like I said, he was the director of special education and gifted programs for the public school system in our town. And our town was at that time maybe 50,000, 55,000. So he was in a high profile position. So I think he was nervous about going to AA meetings because of the stigma on it. And again, at this time and in this town. And so he really tried to do recovery on his own. Community and reaching out. Community just wasn't a thing in our family. We weren't a social family. We didn't have parties. We didn't, we were very insular as a family. The 7 of us, were a unit, and we didn't really have people over. We didn't ever have dinner parties. If it wasn't relatives, we did have relatives over, but there was no like socializing. Very, very insular in that way. And my dad continued with that. And so he was sober for 7 years. And then what happened for my dad after he stopped drinking, is that then other pieces started to come into play. Drinking, as you say, it changes your chemistry and your physiology. So other mental pieces that he was struggling with became now closer to the forefront. And so we didn't have antidepressants really. Prozac was just coming to be the very first one, but Wellbutrin maybe was happening, but there was not much happening more so the way there is today. So my dad really started to struggle mentally, and I eventually lost my dad to suicide. My dad took his own life when I was 28, and he shot himself. And it happened in our house, and my mom found him, and we knew that he had been unwell. We knew that he had been unwell. But I tell you, we lived in such denial. We lived in such denial about it. So we knew that he wasn't well, but we were so ill-equipped to do anything. And I think, afraid to do anything. And again, growing up in a house where you don't talk about your feelings, I think that kind of extended into somebody's in pain, and we didn't know how to speak to it. It sounds, it's silly, but it's like, oh, you
didn't even know how to deal with your emotions in general, right? Like
yeah,
any way, either whether it's mourning, whether it's
yeah.
having feelings towards others.
Well, and he's my father. He's our father. He knows best. We're the kids. It's not our place to speak to him as a cohort or a colleague or an equal and tell him what to do. And I don't know, just all kinds of dynamics in there. But he had been sick for and struggling very specifically with depression.
So the dynamics of your relationship really never changed from childhood into adult, right? It sounds like you guys just kind of carried on, and it never
yeah,
And there was
evolved
no voice.
to yeah,
There
never
was
evolved
no
into, like, you
conversations.
guys being the adults. You guys were
yeah.
always kind of maybe viewed as the kids.
I'll tell you, like when I was a kid, my dad was a big hunter and a big fisherman, and I was not, and I was not a hunter. I didn't, I didn't want to kill animals. I loved fishing, but I wanted to release the fish. But there was something about the peacefulness of fishing and being in the water and outside. And I liked catching the fish, but then I didn't, but then when it came time to gutting and killing and that, I didn't have that innate instinct to do that. And in fact, I didn't, want to. And my dad, would teach me, but I like I was interested in uh I don't know, like when I was really little, I wanted to like build houses for the squirrels, right? There was fucking squirrels all around the cabin, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna build them houses so they have a place to live, right? And I'm not gonna shoot them. I don't know that I don't know if that's instinctual or you learn it.
You just had more of a protect nature kind of
Yeah,
spirit, and you just an instinct, and
yeah.
where versus the predator.
Yeah, so I don't have a natural instinct, and I didn't, and I in a lot of ways I think I grew up feeling like I was a disappointment to my father, or that
You didn't live up to his
yeah,
expectations or something to that
yeah,
effect.
because really what happened is I think at a fairly young age, because I didn't take a lot of interest in the things he was interested in, right? That he was trying to show me. I think I hurt his feelings. This is my psychology, armchair quarterback analysis. I wonder if I hurt his feelings, and because I didn't take interest in the things he was exposing me to,
I did. A different perspective that just popped into my head is it might not have anything to, and this is the thing about perspectives and individual views, right? Is there's so many different possibilities, but like the thought process that came into my mind, it might not have anything to do with you hurting his feelings. He might have felt inadequate. He might have felt insecure that he couldn't relate to you. It
yeah.
might have had nothing to do with what you were doing. He felt guilty that he could not relate to his son, and there were so many differences. So it might not be that you offended him. He just felt guilty that he couldn't connect with you.
Plus,
Yeah,
he's probably dealing with the dynamics of his father and his relationship, as well.
yeah. Well, yes, and whatever transpired, I know something transpired because really he and I, again, I knew from a fairly early age that we just kind of coexisted. We weren't ever. I feel I'm always so like jealous or longing when I see like father son, where there's a bond and a connection. My dad and I just didn't have that. We had moments. There are moments that I could tell you where I knew that he loved me, and there were moments, where that was there, but the overall content of our relationship was kind of just we just missed each other.
How many times
So
do you think he said "I love you" to you?
I don't know, maybe two. That wasn't a big. I don't know. My siblings might disagree. They might remind me that that's not true. And then I wonder if even remembering the literal number is different than just remembering the experience of it not being a common thing.
so I
I knew that he loved me. I knew. My parents, provided they supported, they, it wasn't like, it wasn't where we were strangers and I never saw him. There just wasn't it just wasn't nobody had resources or the health to engage in a way that was, that was, nurturing. We were kind of like 7 people all in their own little areas, and we did things together, and we had Christmas and all of that. We did all of it, but there it was, and even today with my siblings, there's a distance, there's like a formality amongst the 5 of us. It's just everybody is, everyone is just a little bit um, in their own space. My mom passed away a couple years ago, and that's actually in one of the good things that came out of it. And that's the wrong phrase, but my siblings and I have had to work together now to navigate her house and some of the inheritance and different things. And it's actually been really wonderful for us. We've been doing these Zoom meetings over time and having to navigate like the business of it. But then within that conversation, now we're talking about, hey, what's going on with your kids? And, oh, here was this funny story from work. And so it's actually been a way we've been kind of forced to come to know each other in a different way.
So Mike, just for the sake of time, because I know you have to run and we want to respect your time. I wanted to know if you wouldn't mind spending a little bit of time. I appreciate you getting vulnerable and talking about this stuff. Can you kind of explain how this stuff led you to the role that you're in now, and how that lack of feeling of community with your father, that lack of a voice, how that affected you in finding your community and helping other people find their voice?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so I said I lost my dad to suicide, and at that time I was living in New York City. Or no, I was living in New York City at the time. I lived in New York City for about 11 years. And so when my dad got sober, I started into some of the 12-step recovery rooms, essentially Al-Anon and so forth. And then that
Al-Anon, by the way, for those who don't know, is Friends and Families of Addicts and Alcoholics. And so it is a way that you can go, and it's a 12-step program to help family and friends.
Yeah.
So it is another wonderful, wonderful program.
Yeah. So I started in there, and that kind of led me into individual therapy. And then when I was living in New York and my dad died, I started going to some suicide survivor groups, which was not a 12-step program, but really just people who had also lost loved ones to suicide. So I started in there. So for me, that, in many ways, the gift of my dad, his struggle was that it brought me into so much healing in my own life, and has opened up a lot of tools for me that have helped me live a better, fuller, richer life, than maybe I would have known. And those came from my challenges with my dad. So in a lot of ways, those were gifts of my time with him. And so for me, I'm going to be a big advocate for therapy. I'm going to be a big advocate for 12-step. I'm going to be a big advocate for any kind of community that is providing support, really and providing the knowledge, that you're not alone in it. I don't know however that message comes to a person. I think that's so vital. We have a family member, younger person, and this family member is going through some young person struggles, and there's a lot of phrases about nobody else has felt this way, I'm the only one, and I think that's something we struggle with, nobody's going to understand this. And then also, you know, particular.
Healing out loud, what Marie always says. I mean, literally that phrase has really stuck with me because it is something I think we've all been kind of ashamed to do.
For sure. Well,
Is
and
heal out loud.
yeah, and you know, community again, even you know, even if the idea of it scares you, or you know, there's even power in just going, you know, and being quiet and listening, you know, just going and listening, you know, anything I think that can get a person to come into a space where people are processing different, right? Again, my experience is that we can say to ourselves, I can do it alone. I'm smart enough to work my way through this. I can compartmentalize, so I'm just going to put these pieces away and go about my job. This is I don't want to open myself up, but whatever the phrases are that keep us away from community. I'm just going to you know, and a person will go, you know, when they're ready for it. But for me, the healing really has been through community, and then for me specifically working with a therapist. I found like it was important for me early on. I worked with a male therapist, a man named Bernard. He was a tough motherfucker. He was an ex-heroin addict and from the Bronx, and he lined up my shit. And I worked with for about 10 years, you know, and he was so like a really good like mentor, but he was like, he wasn't my friend, right? He wasn't like, you know, he fucking charged me. I mean, you know, but he wasn't my friend. But you know, Marie, you were talking about finding your voice. So that's really with him. I really understood that I didn't have a sense of myself, and so a lot of my
He
experiences.
held you accountable.
Yes, yeah, and was able to reflect things back to me. He was able to help me look at things differently, and in
Kind
many
of the
ways,
father figure maybe you kind of were lacking, huh?
yes, and
So,
in many ways, not that was his task, but you know, there's so much about the story that is universal. Of course, I come from it, you know, being a man, that there were many aspects of it, what it was to be a man, and really what it was to find my center as a man, growing up in a house where what the male figure that was modeled in my dad, I didn't fit, and so there was a long time where I felt like I was inefficient, or that I was not effective as a man because the model that was presented to me, I didn't fit that picture. And so coming to understand, you know, that what my own example of being a man was, and that's been a lifelong thing. I really now, maybe after 25 or 30 years, I can feel comfortable in my own skin, and my own sense of myself uh, as a man, but also as a human in the world, you know.
so there's another phrase that I heard from a man. His name is Garrett Biss. He's another veteran that is advocating. He lives over in North Carolina. He's working with veterans in the judicial system and stuff like that. And he's done a TED talk. Anyways, awesome guy. He has coined the phrase post traumatic growth. And I love that because a lot of people focus on post traumatic stress disorder, right? And he's focusing so much on post traumatic growth. And it sounds like this therapist that you've been working with really kind of helped you along that path of post traumatic growth, because growing up the way that you did, you had some PTSD from that. PTSD is just when you feel unsafe, when you don't feel heard, when you feel insecure from something that happened in your life, right? And it sounds like this man really kind of helped you to find that voice to go along that path of post-traumatic growth.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, for sure. And that was a really formidable time. I was 28 to I worked with him like from maybe 26 to 36 years old. I worked with him for about 10 years. And then we moved out here to Southern California, and I've continued working out here. I think I've had we've been here 25 years, and I think I've worked with maybe 4 therapists. One retired at one point, one ended with COVID. And so I always go back because I find great. For me, individual therapy is super helpful. My wife and I have employed couples therapy off and on over the years on many different occasions. For me, I don't know how a person moves forward without some kind of objective moderator that is able to help reflect back or to provide insight or help just help. So for me, that's been, I don't know how I would have gotten to where I am today without therapy and without community.
So thank you so much, Mike. Just I know that we're getting close, and
I
like I
got
said, I know.
I have about 10 more minutes with you. If I go at 10:20, I'm good.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure because I don't
We'll
want
start landing the
to.
plane
So
whenever
I don't,
landing the plane whenever you're ready, Mike. You know
yes,
what I
I was
mean?
just gonna
So
say. So for the next little while, kind of focus on. Let's hear how you have used those lessons in finding your voice and all of this stuff that you're doing and sharing it with others now, and your writing, your plays, your all of that stuff that you're doing and the classes you're teaching.
Yeah.
real quick, was your dad's suicide kind of the catalyst that made you feel safer to heal and kind of put you in a point where you wanted to heal, or were you already kind of doing that before, or did it kind of
Uh,
allow you to heal more when he was gone because now you were able to kind of really kind of focus on things? He's not present. You know what I
yeah.
mean? I don't.
Yeah. That's a good question. I when he went into treatment and decided to get sober, like I said, we I started to go to Al-Anon and to be involved in more community recovery that way. Through 12 step. And so I was interested and open to and beginning to understand it. But certainly his death was, my world broke. And so there was such loss and such, it's like the stars went out, and so that was such a complete and utter breaking of my world that I would say, that caused, everything from then on, because it was so absolute. There was no return from that in terms of a relationship, in terms of him. So it was so absolute. And like I said, I was 28 at the time that he died, so I was a little bit older, and so then the processing of his suicide in therapy, then you start to look at the history of the relationship with him. And so that's really, I would say, yes, his suicide caused a very specific starting to unpack of what it was to grow up with him, right, and look at it. In a way that maybe would not have happened. The unfortunate thing is that had I been able to do that and he was still alive, there might have been time here now, if he was still alive today, or had been, for he and I to come back to the relationship and to start over and to see, if we could build a relationship. And I won't have that opportunity, with him because of his death. So yeah. But yeah, so that, like I said, when I was a kid, I wanted to build fucking houses for the squirrels. And, I don't know, I had all kinds of different interests and things that were calling to me. I wasn't an actor or a writer as a kid. I didn't do it in grade school, or I did like one little tiny thing, but again, they didn't have that stuff. And I don't know if I would want to do it. I played sports, but I sucked. I wasn't any good, but I played, and I was in the band, but I sucked. I wasn't any good, but I did it, for fun, right? And really, it was. I knew in high school that I had an interest in acting, but I was too scared to try it because, it's stigma, around it. Again, in a small town. So I went to college in Montana, which is not any metropolis, but nobody knew me there. And so I went to the theater department. I said, "Hey, I'd like to take a class. I'm interested." And they put me in a class, and I started it, and I really loved it, and I continued, and then over the years I fell in love with acting, and I decided that's what I wanted to get my degree in. So I got a BFA, and then I moved to New York City, and that's really where things kind of blew open for me. At that point, I was 22 or 23. I was ready. I was a shitty student earlier. When I got to New York, I found a master teacher, and I was ready for the rigor of the program. And so I kind of came to working in the arts later in life. 22 to 24 is when I really started the bulk of my training. But so I was always drawn to artistic expression. I was always, my dad was a great lover of music. That's a gift that he gave us, and so we spent a lot. There was music in our house, but like with a lot of country, Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson, so that there was a lot of music in our house, and my dad loved music, a lot of 40s big band. And so I also have a real love of music and various types of music. And so for me, all of this moving into teaching, the work that I do with veterans, the work that I do teaching across the board, really is about, the military in addition to so many aspects of life, provide a social conditioning and a set of rules that we have to adopt in order to do our job, whatever it is. And the same in our family. Our family sets up a list of rules that we're going to have to follow if we're going to be in this family. Different facets of our lives will set up social conditioning that we have to adhere to in order to be in this space. And oftentimes that social conditioning is about compartmentalizing, it's about shutting down, it's about being effective and efficient and non-feeling and these kinds of skills that are needed to function in this way, right? So in the work of the artist, the work of the actor, the writer, the dancer, the singer, the painter is going to be the opposite of those social conditionings, right? It's going to really ask you to begin to look at the world in a different way. It's going to ask you to become aware of your point of view, how you actually feel about something versus how it's prescribed for you to address something in order to be efficient in your job. Right? I can't have a point of view about this particular piece. I just have to have the point of view that's prescribed by this in order to do my work, right? So the artist is actually saying, well, here's how I actually feel. So getting in touch with your own point of view, your own personal voice, how you see something, right? And then the ability to be vulnerable or open in the work that you create, right? There's sadly, and particularly for men, there's this idea that vulnerability it can be seen as a liability, right? And it can be in certain situations. So you have to then really kind of know vulnerability and intimacy and point of view become other pieces that can be compartmentalized. It isn't that it's all one or the other. I can only be this or I can be this, right? There can be the opportunity to move into a more expressive space when the time is right, when the space is right, when it's safe to do it. Right? But then you have to know that specifically, and you have to be able to open up to it in order to do it. So a lot of the work that we do in this program is really helping people get in touch with their own point of view, their own sensibility, and then allow a place that's safe for the person to begin to explore that and to see what it is to be in the world in a different way. And to create out of that. I'm a big advocate, particularly for men, right? And I say that only because coming from being raised as a man who was interested in art and expression, and I was innately drawn to that, right? But then it gets labeled as you're fucking sensitive or you're blah blah blah, you know, this kind of thing, and that somehow that's a liability, right? It's a liability. And so I'm going to say, fuck that. You know what I mean? You can be the most solid providing man in your circle, and you are still allowed and available to express yourself, to have a feeling, to translate what's happening internally into some sort of external expression through poetry, through painting, through an acting class, through improv, through singing. You know what I mean? It's allowed. You can be both. You can hold both of those things, and there isn't a shame in wanting to create. You know?
Yeah. Hey, Mike, I just had an idea, and I know, we've got to cut this off because you've got somewhere to be. But I had an idea that maybe, sometime early next year, if you're up for it, we would love to have you back on here and maybe share some of the tools that you have learned and the tools that you are teaching others on how to be able to express themselves even when they feel like they can't. Is that something that you would be interested in?
Sure.
Okay, yes. I think that it would be so awesome, because I know we didn't really get a chance to go into some of those tools that you're utilizing, but I know over the years you have collected a lot, and I think that it would be wonderful to have you on to do that. So,
Share your toolbox with us.
yeah. Yeah. You know?
Let's
So,
do
like,
it.
we're so grateful that you were able to be here, Mike, and thank you so
Absolutely.
much for sharing. Thank you for the advocacy efforts you have for other people and especially for veterans, just because we're a little biased. But we are so very grateful that you were willing to come on here to be vulnerable, share your journey from PTSD to advocacy and healing out loud, post-traumatic growth. Like it's so wonderful, reminding people that they're not alone in their journeys.
Yeah,
And just thank you so much for all of your vulnerability and just willing to make the time to be here with us.
yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
thank you for blessing us with your presence, man. It was a absolute pleasure, and we need a lot more people out there like you, being warriors of healing out loud, right?
Yeah,
Because I
for
think that a lot of people gotta understand it's okay, and it's okay to go through these things. The only way we're gonna process through them is throwing them out there to process. You know what
yeah,
I mean? And keeping
yeah,
it right here, it's really hard because this
yeah.
this thing doesn't always align with reality.
Yeah, and I would only say, that the and why I advocate so much for therapy and working with somebody is I think sometimes people are afraid that if I am open, if I open this door, fucking everything's going to come out.
The
I'm going to be over.
Pandora's boxes,
I'm not
yeah.
going to be able to move on with my life, right? And some of that may be true, and where I am today and my ability to sit with what moves me and share it and fucking keep going with the conversation and not be undone by it is because I've spent time with people who've helped me dissect it and look at it and come to understand it in a way so that when I am sharing about it, I'm not undone, right? And so it isn't something that is achieved easily. It does take a conscious looking at and unpacking and understanding, right? So that we're not overwhelmed by it when we choose to share it. And I would say, that the arts programming is a way to do that as well. You know what I mean? You have to, you may be working, with an individual therapist, or maybe doing a men's group or a women's group or some type of, and then you're doing a painting class, or you're learning something new. You're taking a dance class, and those aren't specifically related to, but in a way, it all works together, right? You're beginning to exercise different parts of your soul, your mind, right? You're beginning to kind of put them back together, right? And understand that they can exist together. Yeah.
So a picture that just went into my mind is that idea that if you are wanting to go into the ocean, it is much better if you have safety equipment and a radio. So having people that you can talk to, which is the safety equipment, right? You've got somebody that is there to throw safety nets or throw lifesavers out. And then a radio is how you use your voice, right? Whatever type of creative means that you have to help you heal, right? You don't just go out into the ocean on your own. So if you are trying to do this emotional work, you can't just go out to the ocean alone.
Yeah.
You need help, you need tools, and so that's why utilizing therapists or support groups is so important, and then learning how to use your voice.
I think that I think it comes from some kind of feeling in your gut, and you say how I am today is not where I want to be, right? It's just not. There's just a feeling in my gut that this life that I'm in is not. It doesn't have the fullness that I know it could. And so how do I begin to address that knot in my stomach, that intuition, that feeling that I have, right? That where, here I'm whatever I'm 40 or whatever. I got 3 kids. I've been active duty 18 years, and there's something that's off. There's something that's missing, right? There's something that's not there, and then that begins to tell you, let me see if I can figure out what that feeling is, right? Let me see if I can figure out and begin to see what it might be. I thought I had to be all of this to be in the world, or I could only be this to be in the world, and maybe I'm coming to understand that there's room to be, little for more. I have to go, my friends. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Mike.
Thank
We
you so much,
appreciate
Mike.
you, man.
All right, guys. I'll see you next
Yeah,
time.
thank you.
All right,
Okay.
we'll see
All right.
you.
Bye.
Wow. All right. Well, he's awesome dude, and we could probably went 3 hours with him for sure. So it will be nice to have him come back and talk more in depth.
Yeah.
I do have a little video that I want to kind of show that I thought was appropriate. This is kind of about forgiveness during recovery. Want to do it real quick. I just came across this. I thought it was kind of interesting. I thought it'd be a good place to share on the show, and it kind of goes along the lines of uh, forgiveness. And I think this in particular episode was a really good portrayal of forgiveness. So I'm gonna go in and
Uh,
share this real quick.
Okay, and when you're done with that, if you're
You-
okay with it, I would like to read one more poem to close us out.
Perfect. Share. Yep. All right. Yep. And this is only like a little bit over 2 minute video. So here we go. And let's play.
What is the problem with requiring forgiveness in trauma recovery? That's okay, right? I mean, forgiveness is good for everyone. Well, it's not. And there's a lot of issues with making forgiveness mandated in our relationships or in trauma recovery. First of all, it takes away the agency. You have to either make a decision to forgive or at least have a level of receptiveness or openness to the process of forgiving. If you don't, well, it's going to be really hard for you to experience genuine forgiveness. In fact, you're more likely to experience premature forgiveness, or what some people call cheap forgiveness. When we mandate forgiveness in trauma recovery, we also sometimes don't allow people to get those vital needs met, such as that feeling of safety and agency. Their need to emotionally process and integrate the emotions and physical sensations that come with trauma, because sometimes survivors will use forgiveness to bypass all of that work. And ooh, that doesn't work out well, and it doesn't lead to genuine forgiveness. Also, mandating forgiveness can really reinforce shame with trauma survivors. Shame and complex trauma, shame and developmental trauma kind of go hand in hand a lot of the time. So, if that shame isn't addressed, it can be very difficult for someone to forgive. So, for example, if I believe I'm not worthy, I don't have value, or I'm not good enough, it may be so much harder for me to forgive my offender. So, do we need to forgive in trauma recovery to make progress? No, we don't. Some people forgive, some people don't, but mandated forgiveness is an issue and it could cause harm. So instead of mandating forgiveness, I want you to consider embracing elective forgiveness, which allows forgiveness to be present in your recovery space if it needs to be there. It also allows forgiveness to show up at any time that it needs to, and it also allows it not to be there at all. If you would like more information, check out my book, You Don't Need to Forgive.
All right. Thought that was kind of an interesting clip about being, forgiveness. And I think there's always that expectation that comes with forgiveness, and so I thought that video was pretty compelling. I thought it was a good time to share it was, especially through Mike's story and everything he went through.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I really like the way that that is because in my own journey, with the things that happened when I was younger, beyond my control. Like I was a child. I was, I couldn't. It was out of my control, right? So with that, and then also with my rape, like it was out of my control. For a long time when I first started healing, I had to take that step back. Everyone's like, "Oh, you just have to learn to forgive." And I was like, "No, I can't flip and do that." And so the mindset that I went through at first was I don't have to forgive them. God is the one that forgives. I don't have to forgive them, but I can find peace with the situation. I can
Mhm.
recognize that, hey, it's in the past. It's a cut that's on my arm. I don't have to keep stabbing my own cut. And so, in that, I was able to find a little bit of peace and say, okay, this is in the past. It's not happening now. I don't have to let it affect me now. And so then I had to go through different layers. And so that first one was, okay, it's not happening now. I don't have to keep hurting myself. And then I was able in the 12-step programs, you learn how to identify your part in situations. Even if it's a situation that you had no control of, there are still parts and elements that you did. So not shaming the victim, just taking responsibility. So like for me, with my rape, I had been drinking and partying with people that I shouldn't have been, that were way older than me. They were adults. I was a child. Now yes, that was on them for what they did, but I'm able to take a look at, hey, maybe it would have been a good idea that I didn't go party and think that I was bigger than my britches and gone partying with somebody older. So I was able to kind of look at that and be like, okay, that was my part. And then another part was, they took advantage. And so there's no, I am not responsible for what the actions that they took. But what I am responsible as well is how I responded to that, and
Mhm.
the resentments that I held on and the repeating patterns of abuse that I was putting on other people, where I was pushing my own control on other people because I was feeling out of control. And so the idea was, first I had to find peace and stop hurting myself. I had to recognize that I had hurt others and myself. And then in those layers, I also started to see compassion. And so it was like, okay, well, these guys were really sick themselves. Look how I responded to my trauma. What kind of trauma did they have? And so
Right.
that built some compassion. And then I was finally able to, oh crap, I actually kind of forgive them. It's not okay what they did. I would never be in their lives again. I am not okay with what they did, but I kind of forgive them because I can see my patterns of behavior that I utilized in my own trauma, and now I can see that I know they were reacting to their traumas. And so that brought some forgiveness, but it did not happen right away. It took me 7 years in my recovery to finally get to that point where I'm like, "Hey, I think I forgive them."
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, you you can't fully forgive someone if you're not ready to forgive someone.
Well, you can't forgive others if you don't forgive yourself either.
And that's right, 100% too. If that's a fact. Um, but yeah, I mean, for most part, if you are being forced to do it because sometimes in the religion, sometimes religion they want you to forgive. You're taught about forgiveness and things of that nature. So that's where I think the pressure starts to come a little bit from society. Oh, well, you got to forgive so you can move on. And it's like forgiveness for me to move on or for you guys to move on. You know what I mean? Like I, me forgiving someone because someone else wants me to isn't going to go fulfill me. It's not going to fulfill what I'm looking for at the end of the day. And that's just like anything. And even when it comes to recovery, you can force people to go to clinics and stuff like that. They could go through a 30-day program, but if they weren't ready to be there the 31st day when they get out, they're going right back to whatever they were doing because they weren't ready for it,
Yeah.
right? I think we always have expectations for other humans as well. They need to go to, well, if they're not ready, they're just not ready because you can really force someone to keep doing something. They'll go sit there, they'll do it, but they're not gonna gain anything from it. We try to do that with my youngest, when he's now 19, my son, and we try to do kind of like brought all the family together. It was like one of those,
Intervention.
yeah, intervention. We had like a little intervention. He was not ready for it. That actually in turn made him feel like we were attacking him. It made him feel as though we didn't love him, and I mean, it really actually ended up at the end of the day turned into be a worse situation because we all forced it. We want this for him. He don't want it for himself. So what that did is it really, at the end of the day, it badgered the relationships. He all of a sudden didn't trust no one anymore. He didn't. It really actually made him alienate himself more from everybody because he felt once again like he was cornered. Although it was all coming from a place of concern, love, kindness. I mean, from all the family members, but that's not the way he received it because he wasn't ready. He wasn't ready to hear it. And a lot of times the individual knows what the frick they're doing. They know they're addicted to something. They know it's not that they don't know about it. It's that they just have no control over it. It controls them. And until they learn how to get inside there and turn that control around, they'll continuously be controlled by that substance. And we can't get into others' brains and tune it into what we want them to be or how we want them to function or how we want them to operate. But I think that it's important for a support system to continuously love and be there for that person and try to be understanding. And that's the hard part is understanding, right? Because they keep doing the same stupid stuff over and over again. You're like, gosh, damn, you're bringing this to yourself. You know what I mean? At some point in time. But that's where I think that it's hard for people with the recovery because there starts to be a lack of compassion for that person at some point in time because of what they are doing, right? We as the sane people, the ones that are on that other side and that fighting that demon, we have to be the cognizant one of understanding what they're going through to have a little bit more of patience with that person. Because I support systems are huge in recovery. Just like just like Marie said, you don't want to go out to the ocean by yourself and try to go fend out the rough storm and stuff like that. If you have a team with you, you guys can help try to bear through the sea. You know, you got someone to attack this, someone to attack that. The more people on your team, the more it's going to be. It's going to be an easier ride, and you have someone to kind of take on other things that you're not trying to boil the ocean yourself or trying to survive. It's the same thing with all this other stuff, you know. And um, I just think that as a family member or someone that you may be on the other end of, like, your child's going through this, you have a brother, you have a sister, you have someone who's actively addicted to something. Try to allow. I know the frustration, the patience, and everything else that runs. It's just still try to continuously be there for them. You know, at the end of the day, because like I said, I think in most people's head, they know what the hell they're doing, and they don't really want to do it. They just don't know how to break it, and that's the cycle. We got to just keep trying to do it in a way that's not going to make them feel that you're attacking them, that you're you know you know it's hard. It is a hard thing. And I don't even. It's not really a great answer for it, but I just know that we do need to continuously love people that even when they're going through the roughest times. We have a lack of compassion, a lack of envy, a lack of those kind of things for others. So I think that we just got empathy. You know, we lack empathy. So uh, everybody has a struggle. We get it. Sometimes we just need help. We need someone to grab our hands, pull us through it. Some people aren't ready for it. Some people are, but just be there for them whenever that time comes, whether they're ready for it or not. Just be there. Be that person for them. I'm sure, Marie, you know all about that, right?
Oh yeah, I'm both sides. Both
Yeah,
sides.
hundred
I've
percent.
got
Yeah,
I've got people with their own addictions in my family. You know, I was born to addict alcoholic parents and developing a relationship with my biological mother, and years down and find that compassion and that forgiveness and not excusing what happened, but finding love and compassion for it. And then also on myself from being the addict alcoholic and kind of seeing how it affected my family members, like, I've had a couple siblings that have told me some of the things that I did to them and just how I kind of left them, in the dirt or was disrespectful. And in my sobriety, as I've done my best to make amends, they have found that love and that compassion for me. And so it's been a good journey. But yeah, I just
you
wanted
needed
to.
that though, right? You need love
Yes.
and compassion
Yes.
during that time, right?
But the thing is the hard part is at the beginning when you're first getting sober. Sometimes boundaries have to be put up, and I had to walk
Sure,
away from my
I get
family
it.
for a
Yep.
while because I didn't have the emotional boundary because they had their own lives, right? They
Right.
they they had their own stuff that I didn't really agree with, and I had my stuff that they didn't really agree with, and I didn't have the emotional boundaries for that. So I had to put up physical boundaries
Mm,
for a while, and some of
mm.
them had to put physical boundaries up with me, and where we didn't have conversations sometimes for years at a time. And that was in order so that we could create a new relationship. Like we literally had to build a new relationship. And with that, it was fantastic. And then I was able to build those emotional boundaries. I was able to make the amends that I needed to. I was able to find the forgiveness that I needed to. And so it's literally a new relationship. Like I look back at who I was before. And that this kind of goes into the poem that I'm going to read.
Perfect.
I look back at the life that I had and the person that I was, and it's literally a new relationship with people. I've got new visuals of the way that of the things that I went through, and I have become a new person as well. And so there's so many different layers from it, especially, with this or multi people in a community that have experienced this. So, but yeah. So
All
it's
right, let's go ahead and
been
close it off
interesting.
and get you go ahead and finish it off with a perfect poem.
Okay. So again, as I've been doing this class, and not just this class, but just this last couple of years, as I've been processing through so much stuff, I'm seeing multiple layers in my life. And one of the things that I have found that surrounds everything, in my recovery and in my addictions was fear. I was so full of fear, and I was I initially had fear from the very beginning. All of my actions and my reactions were fear-based for so long in my addictions, and now in recovery, I have to fight that habit of utilizing fear to control my life, right? And so, as I've been processing through things, this is kind of a poem that I started, a few months ago, and the very first line that I originally wrote was, "When was the first time I felt not good enough?" And that was the prompting for this whole thing, because, as we're saying, as we've talked about, we take what other people do to us very personally, which is logical. That is what we do. Somebody hurts us and we think that it's our fault. And so it's like, okay, what do we have to do? And so in my past, these traumas really overwhelmed me, and I didn't know how to find peace with it. And so now where I'm at in life is recognizing that that fear is still there, but I don't have to let it control me. And so that fear is in the rear view mirror now, where there's a reason the rear view mirror is small. It's something that you can look through to kind of like see what's behind you, but the windshield is so big because we need to focus on what's going on. And so this poem is actually called The Fear View Mirror. And so I will go ahead with that. So, fear view mirror. Ahead of me, the road of faith is where my eyes belong. I know that I may crash if I look at the past too long. Yet I look through the fear view mirror, knowledge to acquire. I know I probably won't get all the answers I desire. As I'm looking at my past, many questions come to mind. I want to ask myself for some answers I may find. When was the first time I felt not good enough? When did I start seeing the road ahead as rough? When did all this fear start ruling in my life? When did resentment start cutting like a knife? As far as I remember, the light seemed really dim. I'm not sure what happened first letting darkness in. It's true, throughout the years, my perspective has been changed, yet fear still lives in shadow, although my sight was rearranged. I made it through my worst days, my heart's still beating. However, the patterns in my past sometimes keep repeating. I still feel attacked when someone criticizes. My heart skips a beat and my blood pressure rises. My brain starts telling lies I sometimes can't ignore. It feels like all my love gets locked behind the door. My best friend in the world becomes my enemy, plus rejection felt from all, including family. I start playing God, thinking I know better, controlling situations under a guise of a go getter. Doing my best to fix things, I often make it worse. Then I fall much deeper into that strange fear curse. The stuck points in my head start yelling even louder. I bet the king of shadow couldn't be much prouder. Then the cycle starts again of not feeling good enough. Each next mile take starts feeling way too rough. I know this pattern all too well. It's stuck on repeat. It's getting more distracting, though it started so discreet. I wrote about a loud world. My brain competes with that. It's almost like the noises heard within combat. When I see the havoc that my brain creates, I start to think, no, thank you, and end all the debates. I say a prayer to clear the air, then a breath I take. The noise, it quiets. I feel peace calming my heartache. When I am intentional of letting God come in, his soft voice relaxes me so healing can begin. Many things in my past have caused a lot of shame. I know I still have healing and forgiveness to attain. I've learned fear does not control the wheel more than I allow it. I know when I give my heart to God, He will endow it with a heavenly sight to see through the doubt and pain. When I get to the other side, I see He always remained. It's hard to say it in the middle. I am grateful for the struggle. It helps me to get clarity as I'm going through the rubble. I'll say it yet again. I know this fight is almost done, and I know each mile I go is another battle won. Even though the fear view mirror has helped me see the past, I'm more grateful for the road of faith that is so vast. For now, I won't give up and I'll help others on my way. I have faith God will get me through my darkest day. So, no matter how often I felt fear or how heavy the present gets, I'll keep driving toward the future and won't live in regrets.
I love it. And you know what's wild that you picked one about fear is during our interview, Mike had brought up about, you know, how parents use fear like with their kids and stuff, and he didn't know if that like is. And I literally put on here, we have always used fear for obedience. You know what I mean? And I think that we as children, when you learn about fear, it our parents used it in a way to keep us obedient, right? Like if you don't do this, you're gonna get a spanking, or if you do this, you're gonna get a spanking, or you're gonna get in trouble. We've always used it as a link of fear. So I think that sometimes we don't know how to associate fear when it comes up, right? We always there's different forms of fear. But I think that a lot of times that we don't know how to look at the different forms of fear. We just approach it as fear. I think that at some point in time, you got to identify the different ways of fear and how, because obviously you do need some fear. You see a bear in front of you, you better have some fear and not go up and pet that son of a bitch. You know what I mean? You got to have some fear there, right? But then there's also the fear that keeps us, enables us from moving forward as a human because we're just scared of, oh my gosh, well, what if it doesn't work out? What if this doesn't happen? I mean,
Have
that's
you
why
ever
a lot of people never finish their dream because they get scared at some point in time and the fear stops them.
have you ever heard of the dragon versus lion fears?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so that's something that a therapist once told me. Okay, you've got to take a look at what the fear is. Okay, is there a possibility that a lion could be outside? Yes. Okay, we are in a world where there's zoos. We could walk outside and there could be a lion. It
Right.
is a possibility. It doesn't mean that it will happen, but it's a possibility. So you have to prep yourself that this is a reality, that it's a fear that could happen. Or in your case, you're out in nature and there's a bear. There is a possibility that there will be a bear. So you have to like have your mind prepped like, okay, this is a possibility. It might be an outlandish possibility that it probably won't happen every day, but there is a possibility that you could walk outside and there's a lion. But then again, a dragon. Okay, is there a possibility that there's going to be a dragon outside? No. A dragon is a mythical creature. But sometimes we get in our in our head and we're like this huge giant thing is going to happen and it's huge and I've heard that it kills people and it's so big, and whatnot. But in reality, we're not gonna walk out and see a dragon. That would be like a miracle from God that's just, like, random, we're in an alternate reality, but in our reality currently, yes, it's a big scary thing,
We
but
hit the
in
end of
our
days of first
reality
seeing the three-headed dragon, whatever. Yeah.
but in our reality currently, that is not a possibility. So when you're looking at fears, kind of look at it. Is this something that really potentially could be happening? Or is this something that our brain has blown out of proportion? You know?
And we
So we
do that
have
a
to
lot.
Yeah, so that's the idea is when you are feeling a fear, look
I
at
like
it.
that.
Is this a lion or is this a dragon?
I like that. I like that. That's perfect. Well, I know we went a little long, and that's okay. That's how we do. You guys have that
Yeah.
ability to always press pause.
Yep.
Once again, if you guys would like to join us, come on. You come on over. Email me at everydays365 at yahoo.com. We'll also put Marie's email up there as well, so that way you guys can email her as well. If you guys want
Marie
to get
at sliderbabe.com.
there, you go, and I'll make sure I put that in the banner so that way I can pull it up as well. Um,
So I just wanted to say as well, so next week we are not going to be recording, but the following week we've got a couple other new guests. We've got, like we said before, Cash Coffee, Jamie Butters. I will be in person at Logan, Utah, Cash Coffee. If you're a veteran, local veteran, or you advocate for veterans, please show up. Let's do a shout out. So that'll be that. And then the next day, we will be interviewing a battle buddy of mine from that I deployed with, that I was in Iraq with. And he is
oh,
awesome. He's working with the VFW
good. You
and
better
his
have a
local
good story
VFW.
to tell us about you.
Yeah, he is awesome. And then we've got a couple authors coming up in the next month as well.
Okay,
So
great.
veterans who are sharing their stories out loud. So I'm excited
Love
that
it.
we've got some awesome guests coming up.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much for doing all the behind the scenes stuff and getting us our guest. And thank you for your poems as well. And if you guys would like to get a copy of her poems, please, shoot out an email and she could get you a copy of her book. Maybe she'll even sign it for you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
And also try to go join her over there if you can at Cash Coffee and go try out some Cash Coffee and say hello to Marie and get on the camera and represent for whatever organization you are, or maybe just say hello and say you're a supporter of the show. But anyways, we're gonna go ahead and get out of here. We thank you guys so much. If you guys could just share the show, that would help us immensely. If you have anything on the audio side, if you listen to like Spotify, Apple, any of that, if you could just subscribe over there as well and maybe give us a rating on the show and help get these stories out to everybody, because healing out loud is become another mission for myself and Marie, and we want others to experience that life and feel comfortable with healing out loud. And if we could educate family members, friends, whoever it may be, uh, and you don't have to be a veteran to come on the show as well. If you've gone through some healing and you think it could help a veteran and it could help anybody in general get through their hard times, we'd love to hear from you guys. As you can see, the last couple guests we've had, they're not necessarily veterans, but they have some form have a link to the veterans, and we appreciate anybody that still advocates and is out there supporting veterans. We definitely want to bridge that gap between the two communities. And we thank you guys so much once again for being a part of the show. And you know how we say, don't let the day kick your ass. Make sure you're out there kicking it, and we'll see you guys.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.